There are some things you never want to hear in a Louisiana swamp at midnight. You don't want to hear the telltale splash of a gator near your boat, for instance, or the buzzy cloud of mosquitoes zeroing in on your neck. You also don't want to hear the engine of your old, dilapidated houseboat/lettering shop suddenly sputter to an untimely death. But definitely, and I can't emphasize this enough, you do not want to hear a woman scream. Yet, that was the very thing we heard that evening. Cherie Mamou, locally known as Critter Girl, froze mid-belly scratch, as did my cat, Seraph. Their eyes widened, and I could feel the hairs on the back of my own neck stand at attention. There was no time to confer, because as soon as we'd all run into the night air outside the cabin of my houseboat, the mystery of where the sound had come from was already solved. From the general direction of the scream, we now heard the rhythmic splashing sound of something trudging through the shallow waters that surrounded us. It was headed towards our boat. Summoning my courage, I grabbed a spotlight and shone it out into the night. An old woman stared back at me from the swamp. She was in a bad state, matted hair, chest deep in the water, looking haggard and upset. Which I guess you would be if you were in a swamp at midnight without so much as a pair of arm floaties. As she got closer, I made out more of her features. She was sun-worn with gray hair, wore a dress of motley fabric soaked through with swamp water, and had deep crow's feet around her eyes. As she trudged towards us, those wrinkles deepened with remarkable effort. Cherie reacted before I did, finding the life preserver somewhere and tossing it to the beleaguered woman. But she seemed to ignore the plastic ring. Perhaps she didn't see it. As she fumbled forward, her hands found the rope instead. She began to pull. One hand over the other, the woman slowly used the hemp to hoist herself up onto the deck of the houseboat, where she immediately collapsed into a dripping pile. Small moans came from her chest, and she said nothing. I handed the light to Cherie and went to help. "That's Mila Breaux," Cherie whispered, with no small amount of reverence in her voice. We stood over her, wondering what to do. Something was deeply wrong with this woman, whatever her name was. Her skin was pale, and her eyes had gone a deep shade of yellow. She seemed to be having trouble breathing. She continued to moan, growing weaker and weaker. "It's all right. You're going to be okay. We are going to take you into town and see if we can find you a doctor. Just hang tight," I said. Cherie shot me a glance. I caught her shaking her head as if to say that any attempt to save this person was futile. As I leaned over the old woman, trying to reassure her, she suddenly raised a trembling hand. Before I could react, she grabbed me by the collar of my shirt and pulled my ear close to her lips. "Gris, gris, maléfique," she whispered.